and welcome to this masterclass. It's so much more. And tonight, we're going to be talking about my favorite subject, of course, the brain. And specifically, we're going to be talking about neurotransmitters and the importance of neurotransmitters. But so tonight, like I said, we're talking about the brain and specifically the neuroendocrine connection and how neurotransmitter imbalance could be the explanation for some of your persistent symptoms that maybe you're not able to, that haven't really resolved, even though you've been doing all the things, right? And so we're really building on all of our previous master classes. And we have been talking about this entire series is all about the mind-body connection to optimal wellness and how our brain and our body, our gut, our heart, our immune system, our endocrine system, how everything is connected in perfect orchestrated symphony. And this is how we do all these trillions of cells that we have. They're always communicating to each other and they help us do life, right? And so everything that we have going on with us has to do with the communication between all of these cells. So, and we've been building on this idea of the roadmap to optimal wellness, which was the 4-pillar approach to improving your health and enlivening your life and really obtaining the most optimal wellness that you can. And of course, this is a journey, right? It's almost like the layers of an onion, right? When like you might start this journey to resolve XYZ thing, and then that thing resolves, and then you're going on to the next thing, and then to the next thing, to the next thing, because we're always looking for that next level of optimal. And so, of course, it was the 4 pillars, right? And so this really gives us the sequence of what to look at first, then second, then third, then fourth. And so far, what we have covered on the roadmap was we covered the first pillar, right? So the first pillar is to balance cellular fuel delivery. And in that first pillar, we talked about circulation and oxygen. And then we also talked about blood sugar and blood sugar balance. And if you missed any of these classes, go ahead and reach out to your mentor or the person who invited you here tonight. And just they can lead you to where we have all the replays for this series. And so just simply ask them. And so the next we have pillar 2, which is to lift metabolic and immune function. And we started with the bridge of digestion, and we talked about immunity in the gut and specifically the systemic effects of when there's a problem there, right? And specifically, we talked about leaky gut. And then we dove deeper into immune function and how our immune system works in balance and what can happen when it's out of balance and how that can lead to chronic infections and even autoimmunity. And then we moved into our third pillar, which was to clarify toxic buildup and stabilize endocrine function. And we talked about detoxification and how our body detoxes in a sequence and how we need to improve elimination and make sure we're looking at detox in a safe way through the proper cellular flow out of the body. And then we followed that by talking about hormones and the most common causes of hormone challenges. And of course, last week we started on our 4th and final pillar of the roadmap, which is to calm daily stress and restore nutritional energy. And last week we talked about brain inflammation and some of the and some of how that happens and what that can cause, you know, not just in the brain, but throughout our entire body. Now I want you to remember, this is a framework. This is to help you build on your foundation of health so that you can achieve optimal wellness in both the mind and the body. And we're looking at not only supporting the 4 pillars of the roadmap all the time, but then also as you progress through, we can add things to your program when necessary in order to address specific challenges in the proper order along the way. So tonight, let's get started and let's talk about neurotransmitters. So this is, I'm putting neurotransmitters in the calm daily stress and restore nutritional energy because the foundation of creating neurotransmitters is actually nutrition, right? And I'm going to get more specific into that in just a minute, but this is where I really feel like this topic of neurotransmitters and their creation and what they do really belongs in the Restore Nutritional Energy. So, what are neurotransmitters? Neurotransmitters are chemical messenger neurons. They're released to convey information within the brain from the nervous system to other parts of the body, right? And neurons secrete neurotransmitters after being triggered by an action, right? So there's a certain like electrical charge, right, that happens, and that action triggers the release of these neurotransmitters. And the neurotransmitter has the ability to cross the synapse between the neurons and bind to a receptor. Now, from there, it either continues the message down the path, like an electrical cascade, to other cells, right? Or if it has reached the end, it'll just stop, right? And this neurotransmitter stimulates a different kind of cell to perform certain actions, depending on the type of neurotransmitter and depending on the type of cell. And so their final targets can either be another nerve cell, or it might even be like a muscle cell. Like maybe if we want to like bend our finger, then we can have the one that triggers that as well. Or it might be a gland or any other thing in our body. So some neurotransmitters can either be excitatory or inhibitory. Now, what that means is they either stimulate action or they prevent action, right? And so depending on the situation, occasionally a neurotransmitter can actually do both. So the excitatory neurotransmitter is one that creates changes in the responding cell, right? Like, so it's stimulating the actions. And the inhibitory neurotransmitters, they're actually blocking the changes that might occur. Now, what's interesting is we talked about previously is how all of this is connected. Many neurotransmitters are actually synthesized in the gut as well as the brain. And these include neurotransmitters like dopamine, GABA, serotonin, and norepinephrine. In fact, roughly 95% of serotonin in the body actually comes from the gut. Now, in the gut, interestingly enough, the serotonin doesn't just act as a neurotransmitter, but it also acts as a paracrine messenger, which basically means that it communicates with other cells around it, like in the gut, to get them to do things. So if you remember when we talked about digestion and how the cells of the lining are all communicating together, well, serotonin is a messenger also in the gut that gets other cells in the gut to do things. So the other thing is that neurotransmitters also play a role in the immune system, right? And it signals certain actions to occur. So some interesting evidence that we've seen just recently in science actually points to the potential for some immune cells to release neurotransmitters as well. So actually in our immune system, there are certain cells that are able to synthesize and release neurotransmitters. So it's not just in our gut and not just in our brain, but now evidence is also pointing to our immune system, which we know our immune system is kind of everywhere, right? So now the key here is that disrupted communication between the brain and the body can have serious effects to one's health, both physically and mentally. So let's go into exactly how this process works. Okay, so these are the steps of neurotransmitter function. Step one is synthesis. So first, you have to make the chemicals that become the neurotransmitters, right? And then they're packaged into this vesicle, right? And so these little vesicles right here, this little round thing right here, this is where we put the neurotransmitters after we have synthesized them and created them, right? And it's packaged in these little synaptic vesicles, right? And then the third step is it has to be released across the synapse. So that's this section right here where these neurotransmitters are just hanging out right here. And they're kind of like bouncing all around and moving back and forth and stuff like that. They're really busy little things. And so it's released across there. And then over here at these receptors, there is an interaction. And it latches onto the receptor and it causes something to happen. Now, depending on the neurotransmitter, that could be all different things. But what has to happen next is whenever a couple of these get in here, then all of these extra ones need to go back in through here and get stored back up here in the vesicle. They actually get reuptake into the original cell. Okay, now that's a really, really, really important process. This is actually critical because if we didn't have reuptake, what would happen is you would have all of these neurotransmitters would be like stimulating the cell the entire time. And what will happen is these receptors down here will get overstimulated and eventually they will die off. So you have to have reuptake of these neurotransmitters in order for this process to really stay balanced. Now, here's what's interesting. Most medications, like for antidepressants, this is actually the step right here on step 5 where they work, right? So what they're designed to do is they inhibit the brain's ability to reuptake certain neurotransmitters. And this causes the neurotransmitter to like hang around longer in the synapse here and to actually stimulate the other cell longer. And the idea is that if it stimulates the cell longer, that hopefully it will cause a change in the way we function or the way we feel. But here's why this is actually a problem. Constant stimulation of the cell actually causes these receptors right here to downregulate. Now, if you remember in previous classes, we talked about this with hormones and with things like insulin, where it would downregulate if the cell is overstimulated. The same thing happens right here with our neurotransmitters. So these receptors, because they're constantly being stimulated by these neurotransmitters, they actually begin to down-regulate. Now, what happens is if you're on a medication that is preventing the reuptake, and say it's like for depression or something like that, these medications constantly have to be adjusted, right? Or even changed in order for them to continue to be effective. Right? And so oftentimes people that are on antidepressants, they're like, oh, it's working right now. But then in 3 or 4 months down the road, they're not having the same response to those medications. And this is the exact reason why, because the reuptake is being prevented. And so these neurotransmitters here are overstimulating these receptors, which are beginning to downregulate. And so what they either have to do is increase your level of drug or switch it up to something that works in a different way, right? And so then step 6 is neurotransmitter breakdown. Now, this is also very critical because the neurotransmitter actually makes it into this receptor, and then it's used, it causes the action, and then once it is, the body breaks it down through use of enzymes. Now, interestingly enough, there's a second big class of drugs that operate right here. It actually inhibits the enzymes used to break down the neurotransmitter after they're used up, which actually elevates the levels of these neurotransmitters in the brain and the body. Unfortunately, right here at step 6, these drugs have severe side effects, right? Because neurotransmitter regulation in the brain is something that is very, very important. It's a critical process. And so the brain has very specific strategic operations that it does in order to keep the right neurotransmitter balance in it as often as possible. So what's interesting about this, if you look at this, this is the process of function from step 1 to step 6. Now, most of the drugs, like I said, in Western medicine start right here in step 5 and step 6. But this step right here, step 1, is actually nutrient driven, which is really, really interesting because Western medicine doesn't really want to look at the fact that neurotransmitters are synthesized from food that we eat, right? And so if you do not have the right nutrients to be able to make these neurotransmitters in the first place, then this causes a problem, right? And so what's important to understand here is that the benefits are that if we're having problems, like we're having symptoms of, maybe anxiety or depression, and we've worked on everything else, right? Like we've balanced the gut and we've done all the things, all the steps of the roadmap, and we get to this final step and we're thinking maybe it's a neurotransmitter imbalance. We can look at this nutritionally before we go down the route of, having to, step in an intervention here at the end, because nutrition is right here at the beginning, right? So this is really important. So what do we need for neurotransmitter synthesis? Like, how does our body create these things, right? Well, the biggest thing that we need are amino acids, right? For example, you need tyrosine to make dopamine, right? You need glutamate, 5-HTP, there's all kinds of amino acids, and you need them to make these neurotransmitters. And so where do these amino acids come from? Protein, right? So if you're not getting enough protein in our diet, or if the quality of your protein is not great, or you're not getting the right combination of protein, like say you're a vegetarian or you eat mostly plant-based and you're not eating the right foods in the right combination from the vegetables to get complete proteins, then you're kind of doing your brain a disservice and also your body a disservice, because it doesn't have the proper nutrients to even make the neurotransmitters in the first place. Now, it also needs vitamins and minerals, because those act as cofactors to the amino acids to create the neurotransmitters. So if you're, the other thing to look at is, even if you are getting enough protein and you're being sure to track and make sure that you're getting, you're eating the right things that are giving you lots of vitamins, lots of minerals, all the things. So eating lots of colorful foods, all those kinds of things. If you have improper digestion, so you're not absorbing that protein properly, or that your enzymatic activity in your stomach is not breaking down those proteins properly, then you're going to be kind of stuck here as well. Also, two really, really key things. Your body struggles to create neurotransmitters if your insulin levels are not balanced. Like if you have too little insulin or too much insulin, either way, your brain will struggle to make neurotransmitters. And number two, if you have a high inflammatory state in the body, which means that you're going to have something called cytokines, as an immune response to those, then your body will have a hard time making neurotransmitters. So it's really important. This is why we talked about the roadmap, and we addressed things like digestion and circulation and oxygen and immune system and all this first, right? Because it's easy for us to come and be like, oh, I have fatigue and brain fog and things like this, or I'm having anxiety, I'm having depression things, and so it must be my brain, and it's obviously a neurotransmitter. Just give me something to slap on it and fix it. But the reality is that if we're not addressing all these pieces, then we're kind of giving ourselves the short end of the stick. Because without balanced blood sugars and insulin, and without addressing inflammation and proper digestion and absorption of nutrients and circulation and oxygen in the blood, we could be doing everything right. Like we can be giving our body all the right nutrition, but if we're not addressing all of the things, then our body still isn't able to make the things in the most optimal way. So how do we prevent neurotransmitter dysfunction, right? So the biggest one is to manage daily stress and support our body and brain to be resilient in times of stress. Now, over the course of this series, you're probably thinking, I think she's talked about stress every single week. And you're right, I have, because stress is a direct contributor to pretty much all disease and all illness. I think the number is something like 90-95%, but I can't really think of many illnesses or diseases that are not exacerbated by stress, right? So prolonged periods of stress can deplete neurotransmitter levels as well. And then also just our fast-paced society, fast food society, actually contributes to all the inflammatory and blood sugar and everything imbalances as well. So number 2 is to improve digestion and absorption. And this we've talked about in an earlier class, but this is really, really important because we want to be able to get those nutrients into our blood, right? And so we want to address leaky gut. We want to address are we digesting properly? Are we eliminating properly? Is everything really good there? So that we can get these nutrients into our blood, because that's how we get it through our blood up to our brain, right? And then we want to look at eliminating toxins and specifically looking at the toxins that we voluntarily put on ourselves, right? Like maybe our lotions and our creams and the different types of things that inhibit our hormone production, right? Because these neurotransmitters and the endocrine system and the hormones, they're like super directly connected. Like there's several different axes from our brain to our thyroid. There's our brain to our adrenal glands. There's our brain to, all the different glands in our body. They're all connected and they receive the signals from these neurotransmitters in order to operate. There's also genetic factors, I will tell you. It's possible that you could have a genetic, like a metabolism issue where you're not breaking down specifically like B vitamins, or you have a methylation issue, but all of those things like need to be taken into consideration. But specifically toxic substances like heavy metals, pesticides, prescription drugs, recreational drugs, and even certain substances like caffeine, alcohol, nicotine, NutraSweet, which, I think it had another name at some point, but NutraSweet, antidepressants, cholesterol lowering medications, right? All these things can contribute to neurotransmitter imbalances because they deplete neurotransmitter levels. So the biggest key here to take away though, is that a healthy diet with adequate protein, minerals, and vitamins as cofactors is really, really, really key, because this is all about giving that nutritional power back to your brain and your body in order to even give it the building blocks to be able to do everything else. And so with that actually brings me to our soul connection for tonight, because we have Greg Halliday, the founder and president of Soul Naturals, with us tonight. And he's actually going to share about our incredible more than protein, right? Soul Complete product, which is definitely, like I said, a more than protein product. But he's going to tell us all about it, give us some details, and tell us how it can be a fantastic addition to our program in these times.
What great information. That was fantastic, Erica. So much to think about there, and just really clarified for me the situation with neurotransmitters, how important they are. And the product tonight, Soul Complete, it kind of matches up really well with that last slide that you had listing how we can care for a healthy balance, because it really, I will say this, when we formulated it, it was not to be the perfect nutritional supplement for neurotransmitters, but it is pretty well positioned to do exactly that. And I can explain a little bit why. Soul Complete, right underneath it, it says protein plus. And the plus is because, well, for a couple of reasons. because the product has much broader objectives than just simply to provide a really good plant source protein option. So that's one reason. It has additional objectives. Second reason for the plus is that adaptogens are part of every single formula. And we believe that, I really believe what Erica taught, stress works its way into every process. And in other words, a low level or a managed healthy stress can actually strengthen us. And out of balance stress, or an over amount of it, always hinders. I actually believe what Erica does. If the number's not 100%, it's essentially 100%. Stress, that is too much of it, always negatively impacts the restorative processes of the body and everything and the protective processes and the energy creation and just everything that has to happen for us to feel happy and healthy. And that's sort of Solle's objective. Isn't just like check off the list things that we could view as health problems, but also add to the list the good things that we wish to do in life, to be capable and able to do those frequently, if not fairly constantly, because we believe that life's more than just to be, worked through. Absolutely, it's to be enjoyed. And that happens when health is at a level. And I think we've all kind of had times where we see that level and we feel it. And man, is that great. And then we've probably, I'm sure, not probably, all of us have had times when we're just not able to do what we want to do or need to do at the time that give us happiness. And so it is something that takes a little bit of attention, but the message that I want to give tonight is with products like Solle Complete, it's easier than people might think to make a big change. And in this subject of tonight, which is neurotransmitters and how they're central really to how we feel and perform, this product makes a direct impact in all of those areas that Erica mentioned, in terms of managing stress levels, in terms of enough nutrition so that the body has the raw materials, so to speak, to make neurotransmitters in the quantities needed, helping the body get rid of toxins and chemicals and keeping things kind of clean. And I'm trying to think of what the fourth one was, Erica, but all four of those, to me, are directly addressed. I think the fourth one was improving our digestion. Did I get that right? And so I'll kind of explain why. So Solle Complete Protein Plus has three parts to it in my mind. One part is the yellow split pea protein. Now, what we include in there is not just yellow split peas ground up. Actually, the process in how they're harvested and actually in the purity of the powder is different. We've tracked for a while how good the industry has gotten at harvesting and actually extracting and the whole process. This is actually the next generation of the powder, excuse me, that we use in Solle Complete, and we've had it for a number of years now. Why yellow split pea? Well, first of all, it's a complete protein. So Erica mentioned there are certain aminos. If we don't have them, we don't make sufficient of certain neurotransmitters. You do have them all in Solle Complete, so that's one thing. But above and beyond its constitution, yellow split pea has been part of a number of studies that actually analyze diet choices or nutrition choices that people are making, and things like cravings, etc. It actually has a positive impact. People who are consuming enough yellow split pea every day, they actually make better choices. So it is satiating, and it does do some things for cravings. And then the third point is its particular mix of aminos, many scientists say, are the nearest to what the human body needs and best utilizes. So now that's looking at, there are a lot of different sources for plant source protein, and a lot of really good ones. So that's actually saying a lot. We've used others now. As you know, we have other nutritionals with other proteins that are fantastic as well. But yellow split pea is quite a unique one, and we still would not put any other plant source protein in this Solle Complete formula because of its objectives. We think yellow split pea to this day is still the superior choice. And remember, it's about 18 grams. So depending on which flavor you get, if you get the natural that Erica was showing there, you're getting a good amount of it. And that's just in the normal 2 scoops. Blake Christensen, one of the Solle founders over supply chain, he's a big guy, 6'5", he'll do 3 scoops. So you can adjust it for size and for your personal needs. I'm a big believer in adjusting it to your personal need. So listen to your body and see what it's doing, and give it enough, because your body will over time adjust things. You won't crave as much of it, you won't need as much of it, and other times you'll need more of it. So the protein's a big part. But there are 2 other parts in here that I just want to mention, and there's not time to mention all the ingredients tonight, but at least I can talk about why we have 2 other groups of ingredients. We typically call these groups the plus, but I think the protein choice itself has pluses, but these are the big plus in Solle Complete. The first is a stamina blend that includes several adaptogens, also includes a particular extract of green tea that is 50% the EGCG, which is the powerful antioxidant, pulling inflammation down and protective. So thinking about the topic and what Erica mentioned about inflammation. And then additionally, there is a 10 times concentrate of rose hips. That is the fruit of the rose, incredibly high in vitamin C. And in fact, when we do a lab test of 1 serving of Solle Complete, many months after the production of the batch, so vitamin C does not tend to keep as long as some vitamins the older it gets. So this is many months after, there was still 3,000 milligrams of vitamin C, mostly due to the rose hips. There is some that comes from some of the other components, but it's mostly the rose hips. So a very high amount of vitamin C. In addition, ginkgo biloba for brain function and all cognitive imbalances, and yerba mate and ginger root, which has a number of beneficial and restorative improving effects on digestion. So mostly that blend that I mentioned is focused to energy production and brain health. There's more though. There's the second half of the plus, which is something that we call the BioSolle blend. So BioSolle is all about the improving, fixing, leveling up digestion and absorption. It is all about that. I've kind of shared this before, but when anyone talks about, mealtime or just whatever their eating habits might be, that anytime they eat, there's a lot of bloating, there's gas, there's pain. Food sits there for an inordinately long period of time. About any type of struggle that you can conceive of with digestion is the reason we formulated this product the way it is. Even though a lot of times people call it the protein, the Solle protein, it was equally importantly formulated for this aspect. So this speaks to the points that Erica mentioned in terms of neurotransmitter health, in terms of improving our digestion and purifying and fixing that whole process as well, because BioSolle is about a bunch of soluble fibers from many different sources. Some of them that are some of the preferred food for probiotics. In other words, our probiotic, our friendly flora will flourish with them. Remember that probiotics, to a great extent, manufacture vitamins. We don't have to eat all the vitamins that we need if we help our friendly flora prosper. then we do need to eat tons of vitamins. Okay, I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is many are created by a healthy gut biome. And we can also do that. We can work on both sides. Secondly, there are these particular soluble fibers are soothing, restorative, reparative of the mucus lining that protects. So I'm thinking back to these discussions that Erica talked about with leaky gut and the topics that we've talked about in recent weeks. This product will deal with a number of those. On top of that, there are enzymes in it to help us digest the protein that naturally occur. And the enzyme comes from papaya, papain. And then secondly, there is a probiotic, Lactobacillus sporogenes, which does not need to be refrigerated and holds its potency. And actually, there's a very large amount. I will tell you, there's much more of it in this product than we put, for instance, in ProBio, where we've got a number of strains and a billion. But just that just tells you how much. If there's much more than this, I can't remember how many billion, to be honest with you. It's many times what we have in ProBio. So there's plenty of probiotic. And so I've known people that they're out of their ProBio, and so they go get like a teaspoon, a little bit of powder of this, and get it in there, and they've noticed, oh, so it really does have kind of all the key elements to do a makeover on your gut. So that's a quick rundown. That's leaving a ton of stuff out, but Soul Complete, it's not that hard to mix it in with your shake. And now we got another reason. Erica's masterclass on neurotransmitters, you just gave us another reason why, okay, that's a good one, and that's an easy one. I'm doing this every day, and I'm not going to be left high and dry. You know, I may need to do more if I'm going through a tough time, but I'm not going to ever just be cupboards empty if I'm doing something like Soul Complete every day.
I love it, and I agree with all of that. I think that Soul Complete is such a just really such a universal, like if you're just doing this and still doing your program, but if this is your nutritional powder, so to speak, that you're just really focused on getting this in your body every single day, and whether that's like one scoop, maybe you're doing it as a snack, or you're doing 2 scoops and then doing it maybe as a meal replacement, adding it to other stuff. I do I guess similar to like Blake, I actually do 27-gram protein. Yep. I do a Royal with 2 Soul Completes. That's how I get my 27 grams now. And it makes it taste amazing. So that's the way I do it. But I do that 27 grams because I know that it keeps me full, and I can go like a good 4 hours, probably even longer sometimes. Like I have to actually set a timer on my phone to remind me to eat, because I'm one of those people that'll go like 8 hours and I'll be like, oh, I haven't eaten for all day today. And so but I love Soul Complete for all of those benefits, not just for the brain. This was just one topic for tonight, but I feel like Soul Complete is one of those products, as you'll probably hear me say with like almost every product, because it's the way Soul is designed, right? Every single product, literally we could pick out every single metabolic function of the body, and we could show you how each product affects every single function of the body, in the brain, in endocrine system, hormones, like every single thing. I can show you how just about every single product can improve your experiences in that area. So thank you so much for sharing this information tonight, Greg. I appreciate it. But while I have you, because you mentioned vitamins, one of the questions we actually get quite often when people are looking at products is, they'll like look at the back and whatnot, and there's no it's not like listed out, right? So do our products have vitamins? Like if I'm looking for vitamin E, would I be able to find that in a Soul product possibly?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And in fact, they're all loaded with them. It's not that every single herb or plant is loaded. In fact, one of my favorite books, one of a scientist I met when I first was introduced into this whole world of herbs, that's all he did. He took herbs into the lab, broke them down, tracked and tested for all the vitamins, and then he ranked them all. very low, low, moderate, high, and very high, a 5-point scale. Super interesting to look at something like that, because when you do that with herbs, and remember, we did that with the Avant Greens. I'm just curious, to see where they were coming from. Things like watercress, loaded with way more vitamins than people know. But all herbs have them. Some have a few, and some are just loaded across the board. We usually try to put one in each Solle formula that's a loaded one. And then the others will have their categories. But you can always count on, I'd have to really sit here and think for a second, if there's a product where I'd have to say, yeah, not a significant source of vitamins. I got to think that through, but I'm pretty sure that all of them are quite decent. It's just that we get hung up with synthetic levels. We're trained here in the West that we look at, because all the vitamins are synthetic, almost all of them, even the ones that are quasi-natural are quasi. And so we get trained, we need this much, I need this many milligrams, I need that much. And the truth is, in plants, there isn't, sometimes there's more, okay, but often it's less, and yet somehow you see a better result. So that's another whole discussion. So sometimes I'm just saying there's a little bit of a trap on how much to look for, because we're trained a certain way. And the reason I bring that up is we don't absorb nearly anything close to the quantities that are listed in the synthetic vitamin. We think we are. We're ingesting it, but we're absorbing a fraction of it, or maybe better put, utilizing some fraction. I think it just varies with every vitamin. And then you also have degradation, where they'll put them in there. It might sit on a shelf forever. You buy it. And then if you really had a lab, if we had a way to measure the day I took it, what the levels were, you do not have a lot of companies that put the overages. So knowing it will settle into an amount, if a shelf life average is 9 months, it's still going to be higher, all that kind of stuff comes into the mix. And the truth is, it's all over the board. It's just all across the board what you might get. But plants tend to be more stable. They still degrade, but they tend to be more stable. The levels, I'm not so concerned with exactly the levels as whether the plant has them and whether it's a lower level or a moderate level or a really high level. I kind of tend to, maybe because of the way that I was introduced to it by this scientist, that's how I tend to gauge it for myself, because it seems to work so well. Anyway, long answer, but yes, you can usually find a lot more than you'd think, and a lot more than you'd find in any multivitamin in the formulas.
I love that answer. Long or not, I love that answer. And I want to add to that answer a little bit, because one of the things that I think is that people tend to they're looking for certain vitamins, like this vitamin because somebody told me to take it, or this. And what I love about the plants is that oftentimes vitamins and minerals work better together, these different ones together. And so if you're looking at a multivitamin where they took everything apart and then stuck it together in, some kind of formula, you might not have all the cofactors to get your body to actually absorb it. And so I love the fact that we do use, these formulas from plants so that we can just get it. And what I know is I feel better now on Solle. Let's see, almost 5 years. I hate to say that because it's starting to make me the numbers getting bigger. And so I'm thinking that I'm actually getting older, which, I'm not. So
it doesn't matter if you are, because you don't look it. So yeah.
Yeah, that's good. It's because I take Solle. It's anti-aging. It's all good. I just keep aging in reverse. So anyways, but yeah, I feel better now with Solle, just, and I don't track any vitamins or any minerals specifically. I just know I must be getting them all because my body feels amazing. And anytime I do feel like I need a little extra something, like I was in Utah a few weeks back, and I kind of felt like I needed a little extra vital up there in the mountains with less oxygen. And so I just kind of listen to my body and see how it goes. So, all right. I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you so much, Greg, for your time. I appreciate it. So don't forget to go out and keep sharing Solle, and y'all have a great night. Bye.